processes. Here we go. Okay, first thing we need to understand when talking about cell processes is the term metabolism. Raise your hand if you've heard the word metabolism before. Good, good. What if I said something like this? Young people can eat whatever they want and not gain weight because they have such a fast metabolism. But older people, they have to be careful what they eat because their metabolism is not as fast. What could we say then is a definition for metabolism in that context? Matthew? Sort of, yes. It is basically the speed at which your body burns through calories to then create energy. Okay? When you're younger, your body burns through calories faster, which creates more energy for you. Okay? That way your body doesn't store it as fat. As you get older, your metabolism slows down, and you're not able to naturally just burn through as many calories. Okay? When you're growing and you're younger and playing around and stuff, then you have a fast metabolism. But in this case, we're not talking about whether or not a cell is going to get fat. Okay? What we are talking about, though, is how quickly a cell can perform all of its processes. Okay? Think about it. When you're living, right? If you're talking about when you're younger, you have fast metabolism. Your body's doing all kinds of things. It's growing. It's creating more cells. It's creating more muscle tissue. It's pumping more blood throughout your body. Maybe you're exercising. Okay? Your cells are repairing themselves. Your cells are dividing and multiplying and making more of themselves. All kinds of things are happening within the cell at one time. Every cell is a busy place in which many chemical activities occur. Some activities are releasing energy from food, okay, digesting food and allowing it to give your body energy, making chemicals the cell needs, and getting rid of waste. All of these activities carried out by a cell make up its metabolism, okay? So if I write the word metabolism on the board, okay, this is all of the cell's processes. Now, one of those could be, processing food. One could be multiplying and dividing. One could be repairing the cell. One can be getting rid of waste. One can be moving your muscles. Okay? All of those are parts of the whole cell's metabolism. Does that make sense? Okay. We're going to talk about 3 parts of the metabolism. The first one is cellular respiration. Okay? So, first process, cellular respiration. Go ahead and write this down, then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Cellular respiration is the process by which organisms use oxygen to break down food molecules to get chemical energy for the cell to function. It takes place in the mitochondria, right? The mitochondria is what creates energy for the cell, in both plant and animal cells. So in both types of cells, the mitochondria is where the energy is made. This is where the cell's energy is made. Oxygen is chemically combined with food molecules to release ATP energy. Okay, finish writing that and then I'll explain a little bit. Matthew?
What is ATP?
Adenine triphosphate. We went over that last week. It's just it's the name of the molecule that is the energy. So just like glucose is the name of the molecule that is the sugar, ATP is the name of the molecule that is the energy.
What are some molecules? I mean, water molecules and some molecules and whatever that was.
ATP or glucose or any of them?
No,
Just depends.
Not the movies.
All right, talk about the word respiration. Raise your hand if you've heard the word respiration before, or respirate, or respiratory system. Good. What does the respiratory system have to do with? Brooklyn? Not the muscles, that's the musculatory system. That's the circulatory system. You're like kind of all around it. Sadiksha? Oxygen and doing what? Breathing. Good. Okay. So respiration has to do with taking in oxygen and using it for the living organism. Okay. Now listen closely because this is kind of complicated. So look up here. Okay. In in respiration in general, right? We just finished describing. Let me move it out of the way real quick. Okay. So in respiration involves something taking in oxygen, right? What comes out as a waste product of respiration? What comes out? Jacob? Carbon dioxide. Good. CO2. All right? Now, cellular respiration happens, this is where this happens in the cells. Okay? We just finished talking about how this happens in the mitochondria. So I'm going to draw a picture of mitochondria here, a little peanut shape. Okay? Now, here's what happens. This is where the cell's energy is made. Oxygen is chemically combined with food molecules. So stop there. Oxygen goes into the mitochondria as well as food molecules. Okay? Nutrients, sugar, carbohydrates, proteins, things like that. Oxygen and food go into the mitochondria. That's what you have to do to live, right? For you to keep living, you got to breathe, eat, and drink. Then you're good, hopefully. Okay? Those two things go into this machine, so to speak. Yes, carbon dioxide comes out as a waste product, but the bigger thing that comes out is a much bigger deal, is the ATP energy. Okay? Then that ATP energy kind of floats around throughout your cell, and the rest of your cell parts use it as needed. Okay? So, oxygen and food go in, ATP energy comes out. That's the whole process. That's what happens when you breathe. When you breathe in, the job of your lungs is to dissolve that oxygen that you just breathed in into your bloodstream. Your bloodstream carries it to all your cells. Your cells take it, use it, give back the trash, which is the carbon dioxide. Your blood then transports the trash to your lungs, and we breathe it out. That whole exchange happens very quickly. Okay? Oxygen goes in, transport, exchange, we get the trash is now in it, we breathe it out. Does that make sense? That's the whole job of the organ of your lungs, is to take the oxygen, exchange it for carbon dioxide, and then get the waste out. Now, what happens if you hold your breath for too long? Well, you run out of oxygen. Right? Your body has already used up all of it. The carbon dioxide builds up in your lungs. Eventually, you have to get rid of it or you're going to pass out or die. Okay? Does that make sense? That's the whole respiration process. But once you breathe in, then this cellular respiration process happens within your cells almost instantly. Does that make sense? Okay, Layla? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't really know either. You guys ask me. As far as I know, when you breathe out, you're breathing out carbon dioxide. Now, unless you did, like, let's say you breathe in, and then your body, it doesn't actually use all the oxygen in your lungs, then when you breathe out, then you're releasing the oxygen you didn't use. I really don't know. That's kind of a guess. All right, before we go on to the next process, though, off to the side in your notes, I want you to draw this diagram. Okay? Which is basically what I just drew up here. Oxygen, which is O2, oxygen plus food, go into the mitochondria. Make sure you draw your organelle like a peanut shape. Oxygen and food go into the mitochondria, and what comes out is ATP energy. That's the whole point. Yes?
I've seen one is a protein, just a molecule.
Mm-hmm.
There's two. Is there a formula for cellulose? The chemical formula?
If there is, I don't know it. I mean, I'm sure there is, but I don't know it. I know the one for glucose. C6H12O6.
Yep, I know.
Okay? All right. So, for cellular respiration, here we go. It can be written as a general equation. You need to copy this into your notes. Two ingredients you have to have two things. Glucose or sugar, which you're going to get from your food. So nutrients. Food plus oxygen. You gotta eat, you gotta breathe. Those go into the process, and three things come out. A little bit of CO2, a little bit of water, but the big thing that comes out is ATP energy. That's the main thing created by this process. Aiden? No, it's not a gas. It's an actual molecule. Chloe? Yeah, that's what happens when you hyperventilate, basically. When you get really nervous or scared and you begin to hyperventilate, you're getting in too much oxygen. Your body has to have the right balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide. If you get too much of one or the other, you can get dizzy or you can pass out or feel funny. Okay, moving on to the next process we're going to look at is photosynthesis. So, come back to my metabolism over here. We just finished talking about cellular respiration. Now, we're going to look at photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis only happens in a plant cell because the plant cell is the only kind that has a chloroplast. Okay? So, here's where your notes pick up. Up to the back. For photosynthesis. Photosynthesis happens in the chloroplast in the plant cells only. If an animal cell were going to perform photosynthesis, it would need to have chloroplast. And since it doesn't, it cannot do this process. So, we discussed this on Friday when we talked about plant cells, but in the chloroplast, the chlorophyll molecules trap energy from the sun and use it to transform carbon dioxide gas and water into a simple sugar. Okay, so write that, and then I'll explain the equation down here. This third bullet point is what you write on the big lines underneath. Just write the equation for photosynthesis. This is the one. Okay, so for photosynthesis, you need three things to go in: carbon dioxide gas, water, obviously you gotta water your plants, and sunlight. What you doing? Carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. All three of those go into the process, go into the equation, and three things are produced. Glucose, which is the sugar or the plant food. That's the main thing. The main purpose of this whole process is to create the plant's food. Then a little bit of oxygen and a little bit of water is released into the air as well. But mainly, food is created for the plant. We discussed that on Friday, so that should be a little bit of a review at least. Connor?
So, are plant cells, like, animal cells, are they different? Or, like, so would a Venus flytrap cell be the same as a lemon tree cell, or would it be different?
Good question. These are both the basic kind of like foundational concepts for all regular cells. But depending on the type of cell, there are a few differences. For example, muscle cells, because they are a lot more active than maybe nerve cells, they may have more mitochondria because they need more energy. Nerve cells, they have some different structures in there that make them nerve cells. So what we're learning is kind of the basic foundation that all cells are, and then there are little changes from that. Does that make sense? So lemon tree cells may have a little bit of a difference than like a Venus flytrap cell. That's a good question. Okay? All right, before we go on, we're going to draw a diagram for photosynthesis as well. So right there is number 3, just like we did for respiration, we're going to do for photosynthesis. You don't have to draw the little disc inside the chloroplast if you don't want to, but that is where the chlorophyll is, right? The chlorophyll fills the chloroplast. It fills it up. It goes inside of it. So 3 things go into the chloroplast: carbon dioxide gas, water, and sunlight. Those are the 3 ingredients, so to speak. Those go into the chloroplast, and what is produced? Mainly glucose, but a little bit of oxygen and water. Remember, this is the sugar that is the plant food that it will use to grow and survive. Brian?
Do some plant cells have 2 chromosomes?
No, not that I'm aware of. Normally, they just have one that's really, really big.
Is the nucleus different than plant cells or animal cells?
It's not different, except that it's in a different spot. It's kind of shoved off to the side, but it's the same thing. With different DNA, obviously, but the same idea. It's still the headquarters. It still has a nucleolus, still has the DNA.
It still makes ribosomes.
The nucleolus inside still makes ribosomes. Yeah. Chloe?
So the chloroplast is plant cell color?
Yes. This is the green part. Usually from hair or pigment in the skin, keratin or melatonin, things like that. Melanin, not melatonin, melanin. It's kind of the same thing as like how people have different skin colors from the different amounts of melanin in our skin. It doesn't have melanin. It has chloroplast instead. Because it's not an animal cell. They wouldn't. They can't just create it because they want to. It has to be in their DNA. It's not. What if the sky was purple? You could what if all day long.
It can be.
No. Okay. Last process, and then we'll get to maybe some more questions if we have time. Okay? Protein building. Okay? Proteins are large molecules of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sometimes sulfur. Basically, that's just telling you that proteins are molecules made out of lots of different kinds of atoms. Oh, let me add this to my metabolism diagram over here. Protein building. Okay? Another process that happens within the cell. So, proteins are actually made out of smaller molecules called amino acids. Say amino. Acid. Good. Okay. What do we know about proteins? They are the what of the cell? Layla? The building blocks, or like the bricks. Okay? So, let's pretend we're going to talk about this cell diagram here. Maybe I want to use my microscope, okay, and zoom in on the cell membrane. Okay, so we're going to kind of zoom in on that, all right? I want to know what builds this cell membrane here. What makes it up? Now, it wouldn't actually look like bricks, okay, but I'm going to draw it like sort of like bricks just for the sake of our analogy here. Okay? Now, if I actually were looking at a cell membrane and I wanted to see what is it made out of, I would be looking at protein molecules. So I'm going to label each one of these bricks with a P. Okay? Well, maybe I get even more curious, and now I want to know, wait, I want to know what the proteins are made out of. So I get a more powerful microscope, I zoom in again, and I want to look at one protein. Just one little protein block. Okay? What I would find is that the proteins actually look like this, like a long chain. And each of the little parts of the chain, each of the circles or beads, so to speak, each of those is an amino acid. So instead, I could write an A on all the little circles. Okay? Do you remember in the video where it has where it had the picture of the little blue chain that goes into the Golgi body and it gets all rearranged and looks all funky and stuff? Okay? That is a protein molecule, and the little beads on it are the amino acids. Okay? So in the video, it looks kind of like this, except it's all blue. Do you remember seeing this in the video? Sort of, kind of? Okay. I'm going to play the video again at the end, and hopefully you'll see it again. But this whole chain together is one protein molecule. Just one. One protein. When you look smaller, each of the little parts that build the protein molecule, those are the amino acids. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, what does a cell use the proteins for? Living things use protein to build and repair cells and to control chemical reactions. They can control chemical reactions, but they're mainly used to build and repair cells, at least for our analogy. Now, the organelles in the cell that produce protein are the what? What's the brickyard of the cell? Go ahead. Ribosomes. Thank you. The organelle that produces the protein is the ribosome. They are known as the protein factories, or like the brickyard of the cell. Okay? Riley, question? Both. Except for, we're just talking about, in general, some of the processes that a cell can perform. All right, we'll get a wipe and pick it up again. Okay. I'm going to show you the video again as kind of a review. We'll watch the organelles video quite a few times because the more that we learn about it, the more the video should make sense. Okay? But before we do that, let me give you these instructions for your homework. At the top of your paper, you're going to write this. There's only 4 questions, and they are a review from the lesson that I just taught you, or just today. So yes, you may use your notes to help you, but your answers need to be number 1 in cursive, and number 2 in complete sentences. I will also tell you they are not short, quick answers. You need to give me good, full details. Use your notes to help you. Okay? Explain your answers well. All right? Now, don't do it now until we watch the video again. But write those 2 directions. And then after that, we're going to go to recess.